In the city of Babylon, beneath the heat of the desert sun, a chariot builder named Banser sat upon the low wall of his house. His strong hands, usually busy shaping the wood of chariots, lay idle that day. Around him were the tools of his trade. Beside him stood an unfinished chariot that should have been completed long ago. Yet he stared at it with dull eyes, for his mind was heavy with worry and weariness.
He had labored all his life shaping wood and building chariots for noblemen and merchants, yet his purse was always empty. Each month passed with the same struggle, enough to eat but never enough to save. He thought about his years of work and realized he had built wealth for others, not for himself.
As he sat lost in thought, his friend Cobby, the musician, appeared in the street carrying his lyre. Seeing Banser idle, Cobby laughed and called out, "Has the chariot builder turned philosopher, or has wealth found you at last?" Banser smiled faintly and replied that neither was true. His hands were tired, his purse was empty, and his heart was heavy.
Cobby joined him on the wall. He confessed that he, too, was weary of being poor. Though his music pleased the wealthy, it brought him little reward. He longed for gold, not for its own sake, but for the comfort and security it could bring. The two men sat in silence, realizing that they shared the same hunger for a better life.
Banser spoke of his dream from the night before, a dream where he had more gold than he could count. He saw himself giving generously to his family and living without worry. But when he awoke, he found himself as poor as ever. The dream left him uneasy, for it made him realize that mere hard work had brought him no riches. They wondered aloud why some men in Babylon were rich, while others toiled endlessly for little reward. Both had seen their childhood friend Arkad rise to great wealth. Once he had been as poor as they were, yet now he was said to be the richest man in all the city. His house stood tall, his servants were many, and his name was known in every market.
Banser suggested they visit Arkad and ask him how he achieved such fortune. Perhaps he had learned some secret that others did not know. Cobby eagerly agreed, saying that wisdom was better than luck and that they should not be ashamed to seek advice from one wiser than themselves.
Together they left the wall and walked through the streets of Babylon, past merchants selling wares and workers laboring under the sun. They passed goldsmiths, traders, and camel drivers, all busy with their tasks. Everywhere wealth seemed to flow, yet none of it reached their hands. This thought strengthened their resolve to find answers. As they approached the home of Arkad, its beauty and size reminded them how far they had yet to go. The air around it smelled of oil and incense, and servants moved with quiet precision. Standing before its great bronze doors, Banser paused and looked at his friend. "We came seeking wisdom," he said. "Let us find it."
And so began their journey, not of labor or fortune, but of learning. For the men who once desired gold above all else were now ready to understand how to earn it, keep it, and make it grow. Their steps toward Arkad's door were the first steps toward a richer life.
Banser sat in the shadow of his unfinished chariot, staring blankly at the walls of Babylon. His hands, strong and rough from years of hard work, rested idle. Though he had built chariots for princes and nobles, his own purse was empty. Hunger gnawed at his family, and his heart was heavy with confusion. As he pondered his misfortune, his old friend Cobby, a musician, approached him with his lyre slung over his shoulder. Cobby, too, was weary, for the coins in his pouch were few. He sat beside Banser and asked why a man so skilled and hard-working could not fill his purse.
Banser sighed and confessed that though he earned much in his youth, the gold always slipped away. They both realized that despite their labor, they had learned nothing about keeping wealth. The rich seemed to hold some secret unknown to them.
They decided to seek wisdom from their old companion Arkad, who had once been as poor as they were, but had become the richest man in all of Babylon. With hope in their hearts, they made their way through the bustling streets to Arkad's grand home.
When they reached him, Arkad welcomed them warmly. He was a calm man, his face lined with age yet peaceful. They asked how he had come to such wealth while they remained poor. Arkad smiled gently and began to tell his story.
He told them that long ago he had been a simple scribe. He wrote records on clay tablets for merchants, earning just enough to live. One day, a rich moneylender named Algamish came to him, asking for a record copied overnight. In return, Arkad asked to be taught the secret of wealth.
Algamish kept his promise and shared a lesson that changed Arkad's life. He said, "A part of all you earn is yours to keep." Arkad began saving 1 coin from every 10 he earned. At first it seemed slow, but his purse grew heavier and he felt pride in owning his own gold.
As the months passed, he realized that saving alone was not enough. He lent his coins unwisely to a friend who lost them in foolish ventures. He learned then that gold grows only when placed in wise hands. So he began to invest carefully, listening to those who had succeeded before him.
He watched his gold multiply as the small coins he had saved began to earn more coins in return. The wealth grew like a tree nourished by steady care. Over years, he built strong relationships with merchants, invested in trade caravans, and owned lands that brought constant income.
Looking at his friends, Arkad said that anyone can do the same. The secret was not hidden, it simply required discipline, patience, and wisdom. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity to the man who saves at least 1/10 of his earnings and puts it to work, he said.
Banser and Kabi listened in silence. They realized that the path to riches was not through luck or endless toil, but through knowledge and control. They left Arkad's home with a new purpose: to save, to learn, and to let their gold work for them.
That day, the wisdom of wealth began to spread across Babylon. The lesson of saving and growing gold became a whisper in every street, a truth known by all who sought prosperity and peace.
The great city gathered one morning in the open courtyard, where citizens waited to hear the wisdom that promised to turn their empty purses into heavy ones. I stepped forward before them and began to speak about the 7 simple ways to fill a lean purse. Each one, I said, was a key that could open the gate to prosperity, if practiced with patience and discipline.
I began with the first lesson: to keep a part of all that one earns. Too many men, I said, work from sunrise to sunset and yet have nothing left at the month's end. The first step is to pay yourself before you pay others. Take 1 coin from every 10 and keep it aside. That single act, repeated faithfully, makes the purse begin to fatten.
Once a man has begun to save, he must learn to control his spending. Many think they spend only on needs, but most gold goes to desires that seem necessary. To grow rich, one must measure expenses carefully, planning what is truly required and cutting away the rest. When gold is no longer wasted, what remains can be saved and used for profit.
Then I spoke of making the saved coins multiply. Idle gold is like an ox that stands still. It does no work. Let your savings go forth like servants to labor for you. Lend them wisely or invest them where they will bring back more gold, just as a tree gives fruit. The man who makes his gold earn more gold finds his wealth growing as surely as grain multiplies in a fertile field.
Next came the warning to guard treasure from loss. Many are tempted by quick schemes or by men who promise large returns but know nothing of the trade they speak. Gold flees from the unwise and stays only with those who seek advice from experienced men. Better to earn modest profits safely than to chase illusions that end in ruin.
I reminded them that every man should make his dwelling a place he owns. Paying rent each moon enriches another, but owning a home gives comfort and security. The house, once paid for, becomes a fortress for the family and a symbol of progress. The man who builds his home lays one of the firmest stones in the foundation of independence. And I spoke of the need to prepare for the days when strength fades. No man works forever. Gold set aside today will provide food, shelter, and peace in later years. Those who plan for the future walk confidently, while those who spend all they earn must later depend on the kindness of others.
Finally, I urged them to increase their ability to earn. The man who learns more of his trade, who studies, who works diligently to gain skill, will find that opportunity seeks him. Knowledge and effort turn an ordinary worker into a master, and the master's reward is always greater.
When I finished, I told the people that these 7 steps were not secrets known only to the rich. Anyone could follow them. Gold does not favor the powerful or the lucky. It comes to those who follow simple laws and persist without giving up. The crowd listened silently, each man and woman seeing, perhaps for the first time, that the path to abundance was already beneath their feet.
In the bustling city of Babylon, people gathered in the grand courtyard to listen to a wise man speak about fortune. The air was warm, filled with the hum of curiosity, and the crowd leaned closer as he began to share his thoughts on what people called luck.
He asked everyone why they believed some men were lucky while others were not. Many voices rose at once. Some said luck was a gift from the gods. Others said it was pure chance. The wise man smiled and asked if luck ever came to those who slept all day or wasted their time waiting. The crowd fell silent. He began to tell a story of a young man who once had a chance to buy a valuable piece of land. The land was fertile, close to the river, and perfect for farming, but the young man hesitated. He said he would decide tomorrow. The next day, another man had purchased land and grew rich. People called that man lucky. Yet, as the wise man explained, the so-called lucky one was only quick to act when a good chance appeared.
He continued with another story of a trader who heard about a caravan traveling north with rare jewels. The trader had the money to invest, but doubted the journey's success. He delayed, wondering if it was too risky. When the caravan returned, those who had invested became wealthy beyond measure. The trader sighed and said, "I was unlucky." The wise man looked around and said softly, "He was not unlucky, he was unready."
He explained that fortune waits for no one. Opportunities come quietly and pass swiftly. Those who delay lose the gifts waiting for them. The goddess of good luck, he said, walks through the city every day, knocking gently on the doors of those who work and stay alert. But she passes the homes of the lazy and the fearful.
He reminded the crowd that luck is not born from gambling or dreams of sudden riches. The man who buys lottery tickets or bets on chance does not earn fortune. He only feeds his hope. True luck belongs to those who act on sound judgment and seize the right moment.
The wise man pointed to a group of farmers in the distance. "Look at them," he said. "They rise before dawn, till their fields, and care for their crops daily. When the rains come, people say they are lucky, but it is not luck, it is the reward for effort and timing." He shared one final tale of a mason who longed to own a workshop. One day, his master offered to sell him the tools and shop at a fair price. The mason hesitated, unsure if he could handle the responsibility. A bolder worker bought it instead and built an empire of fine stonework. Years later, the mason still spoke of his bad luck. The wise man looked around and said, "Luck is never waiting, it is moving. The man who waits for it will watch it pass by."
He ended by saying that fortune follows action. The goddess of good luck favors the man who prepares himself, who studies his trade, saves his gold, and stands ready when chance arrives. The crowd nodded, understanding that good luck is not a mystery, it is the companion of effort and readiness.
As the people returned to their homes, they carried with them a new understanding that fortune was not hidden in the stars or the favor of gods, but in their own willingness to act when opportunity appeared. Nomasir stood before his father, a man of immense wisdom and wealth, and listened as he was told that the time had come to prove his worth. His father handed him two things, a small bag of gold and a set of clay tablets inscribed with precious lessons. He explained that the gold was for immediate use, but the tablets contained the real treasure, the knowledge that could make a man wealthy beyond measure. Nomasir was told to go out into the world and return only when he had built his own fortune. With determination, Nomasir set forth on his journey, confident that the gold would serve him well. In the beginning, he spent freely, buying fine clothes, hiring servants, and enjoying the pleasures of life. Friends surrounded him while the gold lasted, and he believed that success was near. But as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, his purse grew lighter. One by one, his new companions vanished, leaving him with nothing but regret and the empty echo of wasted wealth.
In his loneliness, he finally turned to the clay tablets. As he brushed off the dust and read the first inscription, the wisdom struck deep. The first law said that gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity to any man who saves not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future. Nomasir realized his mistake. He had spent without saving, believing his fortune would never end.
The second law revealed that gold labors diligently and multiplies for the wise owner who finds profitable employment for it. Nomasir understood that money must be put to work, to earn more, not to sit idle. Wealth, like a seed, must be planted in fertile ground. He vowed that when he acquired gold again, he would make it serve him, not the other way around. The third law taught that gold clings to the protection of the cautious owner who invests under the advice of wise men. He remembered how easily he had trusted charming talkers and careless traders. They had taken his coins and vanished. From that moment, he promised to seek the guidance of men proven in trade before risking even a single coin.
The fourth law warned that gold slips away from the man who invests in businesses or purposes he is not familiar with. Nomasir recalled investing in ventures he did not understand, ships that never returned, goods he had never seen. He now knew that ignorance was costly. Knowledge was the foundation of safety.
The fifth law declared that gold flees the man who seeks impossible earnings or follows the advice of tricksters and schemers. He remembered men who had promised quick riches and led him to ruin. Now he understood that gold grows slowly and steadily when treated with respect.
Years passed, and Nomasir worked hard, applying each law faithfully. He saved a part of every earning, invested in sound ventures, and learned from skilled men. His fortune began to grow quietly, just as the tablets had promised. By the time he returned home, his wealth surpassed even his father's expectations.
When he stood again before his father, he returned the clay tablets with gratitude. He confessed that he had lost the first gift of gold, but gained far more through the wisdom contained in those simple laws. The real treasure, he said, was not the coins themselves, but the knowledge that creates and protects them.
The wisdom of those laws spread across generations, guiding countless men to prosperity. Gold, it turned out, was not loyal to anyone by chance. It obeyed only those who understood and respected its ways.
Rodan, a skilled spearmaker of Babylon, had just received a generous reward from the king for his craftsmanship. The large sum of gold weighed heavily in his hands, not for its weight, but for the responsibility it carried. He felt uncertain about how to use it wisely. His sister came to him, pleading that he lend the gold to her husband so they might start a business. Torn between love for his family and fear of losing his hard-earned fortune, Rodan sought the counsel of Mathon, the city's most respected lender of gold. Mathon welcomed Rodan kindly, inviting him to sit among scrolls, clay tablets, and sealed money jars. His house smelt of parchment and metal, the air thick with wisdom. Mathon was known for his patience and calm advice, and Rodan hoped he would provide clarity. As Rodan explained his problem, Mathon listened without interruption, nodding slightly, the light from an oil lamp flickering on his face.
When Rodan finished speaking, Mathon smiled gently and said that every man who holds gold faces the same trial, the decision of when and to whom he should trust it. He told Rodan that the gold in his chest is like a flock of sheep. If properly guarded, it multiplies. If given to the wrong shepherd, it may wander and never return. Mathon then offered to share his own experiences to help Rodan understand the nature of lending.
Mathon began his tale. Years ago, a merchant friend asked him for a loan to buy fine jewels, promising great profit. Mathon, trusting his friend's word but not his skill in that trade, lent the gold. The merchant soon lost it all because he lacked knowledge of gems and was deceived by a dishonest dealer. The gold never returned, and Mathon learned that lending should only be done when one is certain of the borrower's wisdom in the venture.
He then told of another man, a farmer, who borrowed gold to buy oxen for plowing his fields. The man was skilled and hard-working, and when the season passed, he repaid both the gold and a small profit. From that day, Mathon realized that lending to those who have proven ability and honest character brings safety to one's treasure. Gold, he said, should serve industrious men, never dreamers. Rodan listened intently, his mind clearing like water after a storm. Mathon leaned closer and told him that generosity is a noble quality, but when it risks the loss of one's savings, it becomes foolishness. He explained that even when family asks for help, one must lend only when there is surety of repayment, not out of emotion, but out of wisdom. Gold must never be used in ventures one does not understand. To emphasize his words, Mathon showed Rodan a small pouch filled with tokens, records of every loan he had ever made. Each clay token bore marks of repayment or loss. He picked up one token and said, "This was a wise loan, repaid with gratitude and profit." Then he picked another, darker one, saying, "This was a foolish loan, made from pity, not judgment."
Rodan could see the story of a lifetime carved into those simple marks.
As the evening deepened, Mathon told Rodan to let his gold remain in his purse until he found a safe and certain use for it. A man should first learn how money works before sending it to labor. Gold, he said, flees from those who give it to the unwise or the dishonest. When handled with patience and knowledge, it multiplies faithfully.
Rodan rose, thanked the old lender, and left with a peaceful mind. He realized that wisdom was more valuable than gold, for it guided the gold to safety. The night sky stretched over Babylon, silent and endless as Rodan walked home, not richer in coins, but in understanding.
The great city of Babylon stood strong under the blazing desert sun, surrounded by mighty walls that stretched high into the sky. These walls were the pride of the people, built stone by stone with precision and care. They were said to be so thick that 4 chariots could race atop them side by side without fear of falling. To anyone outside the city, they looked unbreakable, a fortress that could never be conquered.
Inside the city, people lived in comfort, trading fine goods, tending their shops, and walking through sunlit courtyards. They spoke often of the safety they felt, for those towering walls had never failed them. The elders told stories of old wars when enemies gathered at the gates only to be met by the strength of Babylon's defenders. Each stone in the wall held the memory of courage, and every citizen believed that as long as those walls stood, their lives and families would remain safe.
One quiet afternoon, as the city went about its usual rhythm, a messenger ran through the streets with urgent news. A great army was approaching from the desert, thousands of soldiers strong, armed with heavy weapons and siege towers. Fear spread quickly, and people hurried to gather their belongings. The king's guards called everyone inside the walls, shouting for the gates to be sealed before the enemy arrived. The great bronze doors closed with a thunderous sound, locking the city within its stone embrace.
Night fell, and the torches along the walls flickered in the wind. Soldiers stood watch, their spears gleaming under the firelight. From the towers, they could see the enemy's campfires glowing like stars scattered across the dark plain. The city held its breath. Yet behind those mighty walls, no one panicked. The people trusted their defenses. They had seen danger before, and their walls had always protected them.
Days passed. The enemy surrounded Babylon completely, shouting threats and launching stones with giant catapults. The ground trembled with every strike, but the walls stood unmoved. The people gathered in the courtyards, praying silently and thanking the builders of the city for their foresight. The soldiers on the wall stayed firm, their courage fed by the strength beneath their feet. The enemy grew tired, their supplies ran short, and finally, after weeks of futile attack, they began to withdraw into the desert.
When the sun rose again over the calm city, a great cheer echoed through every street. The people had survived once more. The king stood before his citizens and praised not only the strength of the walls, but the wisdom of those who built them. He reminded everyone that safety and security are never accidents. They are built long before danger arrives. Just as those walls were built in times of peace to protect the people in times of war, so too must every person build their own walls of safety in life. The people listened with respect. They understood that their city's strength came not from luck, but from careful preparation. They returned to their homes and shops with renewed gratitude, proud of their city and its builders. That day, Babylon's walls stood not only as stone barriers, but as symbols of foresight and wisdom, a reminder that true safety is built by hands that plan for the future.
And so the city continued to flourish, safe within its mighty walls, proof that those who prepare for coming storms can live without fear, no matter how strong the winds beyond their gates.
Arkad walked through the crowded streets of Babylon with an empty stomach and a heavier heart. The morning sun burned over the clay buildings, but no warmth reached him. He was hungry, broke, and deeply ashamed. Everywhere he turned, he saw others eating, trading, living freely, while he had nothing but debts he could not repay.
He pressed his hand to his stomach, hearing it growl, and wished for even a single coin. Then, through the chatter of the marketplace, a familiar voice called his name. It was Debasar, once a man known for wealth, now remembered by some as a camel trader. Arkad turned reluctantly. He feared Dabasir might remind him of what he had borrowed and never returned. But Dabasir's eyes held no anger. Instead, they carried calm understanding. He gestured to Arkad to sit beside him near the wall of a nearby inn. A servant brought food, warm bread and a bowl of stew. Arkad stared, ashamed, until Dabasir pushed the bowl toward him. "Eat," he said. Arkad hesitated, thinking he did not deserve it, but hunger won.
When Arkad finished eating, Dabasir began to speak. "Once I too sat hungry," he said, "not because I lacked food, but because I had lost my honor." Arkad listened, eyes lowered. Dabasir told him that in his youth he spent money foolishly. He borrowed from friends, thinking he could always repay later, but later never came. His debts grew. When his creditors came, he fled Babylon, seeking escape instead of courage. He wandered the desert until he joined a caravan bound for Syria. But on the road, raiders attacked. He was captured and sold as a slave. From freedom to bondage, his foolish choices had chained him. In slavery, he was sold to a rich Syrian woman who looked at him with contempt. "A man who cannot respect gold," she said, "does not deserve freedom."
She assigned him to care for her camels. For months he lived in silence, cleaning stables, feeding animals, and hating himself. But one night, while the moon hung high, he sat outside the tents and asked his heart what he truly desired. He realized he did not wish for wealth first, he wished for self-respect. He decided that he would return to Babylon, face his debts, and repay every coin, no matter how long it took. With help from another slave, he escaped under the cover of darkness. For days he walked across the barren desert, surviving on little water, guided only by stars and determination. Finally, he reached the gates of Babylon, weak, dusty, but alive. There he found one of his old creditors and begged forgiveness, promising to pay everything back. The man saw truth in his eyes and agreed.
Dabasir then divided his earnings into 3 parts, one for living, one for debts, and one to keep. Slowly, coin by coin, he paid every man he owed. It took years, but he never stopped. When he made the final payment, he felt lighter than he had ever felt before. His name regained honor, people trusted him again. From then on, every piece of gold he earned was respected, not wasted.
He ended his story and looked at Arkad. "You may sit poor today," he said, "but your future depends on the promises you make to yourself. Pay what you owe, even if it is small. Earn with honesty. Hold your gold tightly and let no excuse weaken your will." Arkad felt the words strike deep. For the first time in days, he lifted his head.
As Arkad left, the streets of Babylon no longer looked cruel. They looked full of chances waiting to be earned. The story of a camel trader had given him something greater than gold, a way to live again with dignity and strength.
Long ago, a group of archaeologists unearthed a set of weathered clay tablets from the ruins of ancient Babylon. When cleaned and translated, they revealed the personal writings of a man named Dabasir, once a slave, once a debtor, but later a man of freedom and means. These clay tablets told how a single Babylonian rose from hopeless debt to independence through simple yet powerful habits of order and discipline. The writings began with Dabasir describing the time he had been weighed down by debt. He owed gold to several people in the city, merchants, moneylenders, and traders. His earnings were small, yet his appetite for pleasure and luxuries was great. Soon he had nothing left to pay his creditors. They chased him through the city's narrow lanes, their voices echoing against stone walls, demanding repayment. He wrote of his shame and exhaustion, feeling trapped in a pit of his own making. Unable to face them, he fled Babylon with companions who promised riches in distant lands. Yet fortune did not favor them. They were captured by desert raiders and sold into slavery. Dabasir became a servant in a faraway household, tending to animals and fetching water under the burning sun. In the silence of those long, punishing days, he began to think about the life he had lost, not because of fate, but because of his own careless hands.
In his master's house lived a wise woman who saw his sorrow. She asked why he was not free, and Dabasir told her of his debts. She said that a man who cannot repay gold borrowed from others cannot earn freedom, even if his chains are broken. Her words struck deep.
That night, he gazed at the stars above the desert and made a silent vow. He would return to Babylon and repay every coin, no matter how long it took.
He escaped across the sands and made his way back home. Once again in Babylon, he sought honest work and began to plan. He listed every person to whom he owed gold, recording each amount on a small tablet. He decided to divide his earnings in a fair and wise way. For himself, he would keep 1/10 of all he earned. 2/10 he would use to feed, clothe, and shelter himself. The rest he would send to his creditors, each receiving a fair share every month until the debts were gone. He worked long hours, never missing a single payment. Some creditors mocked him at first, thinking he would fail again, but month after month, his coins came without delay. Over time, those same creditors began to respect him. His steady payments restored his honor in the city. Even the merchants greeted him with smiles once more, knowing that his word was good. Years passed, and the final tablet recorded the day his debts were gone. Dabasir wrote that he felt like a man reborn. His purse no longer empty, his heart no longer heavy. His savings began to grow, and the same discipline that had freed him from debt now guided him toward wealth. His simple plan had changed his life completely. When modern scholars read these tablets, they marveled at how such ancient words carried lessons that still held true. The story of a man's careful plan, his resolve, and his honesty had survived across thousands of years, pressed into clay, sealed by time, and rediscovered to remind the world that order and discipline are the foundation of every strong life. In the golden city of Babylon, traders filled the streets, and the sound of merchants calling out echoed under the sun. Among them traveled Sharunada, a man of great wealth and reputation, whose name was known across the desert routes for his honesty and success. He was on a long journey with a young companion, the grandson of his old business partner, Arkad Gula. The young man was proud, dressed in fine robes, yet his eyes carried the carelessness of one who had inherited comfort without struggle. As the caravan moved slowly along the hot road, Sharu looked at the youth and saw in him the same arrogance he once had in his early days. He decided to tell him his story, not as a lecture, but as a tale of a man who had walked the path from slavery to fortune. He spoke of the time when he was a young man, working as a slave in the house of a wealthy merchant. His days were long, his back bent under labor, and his heart filled with despair. But within him burned a quiet determination, the belief that dignity and freedom must be earned through effort. He obeyed his master faithfully, never stealing, never lying, and never avoiding his work.
One day, his master noticed the honesty of this young slave. Instead of punishment or harsh words, he offered him trust. Sharu was given small tasks of responsibility, first managing the stable, then handling the accounts of trade. Each time, he performed with care and loyalty. Gradually, he gained the merchant's respect, and in time, his freedom.
When freedom came, he did not waste it. He worked harder than before, carrying goods across cities, trading with honesty, and keeping his promises to every man. Soon, he met Arkad Gula, a man of equal diligence, and together they built a trading company that spanned from Babylon to distant lands. Their reputation rested on one principle, that a man's word was as strong as the walls of Babylon itself.
The Sharu told the story. The young man listened in silence. He could not imagine that this noble merchant once wore chains. Sharu smiled slightly and said that no man's fate is fixed. Fortune follows those who earn it with effort and integrity. He reminded him that wealth gained through inheritance fades quickly, if not strengthened by personal work and discipline. When they finally reached Babylon, the towers and gates shimmered under the sun. The young man, humbled and thoughtful, turned to Sharu with respect. He understood that the greatest riches were not gold or silver, but the strength of character that could build them. Sharu had indeed been the luckiest man in Babylon, not because fortune found him, but because he had created his own luck through faith, honesty, and relentless work.